Thanks very much, and thank you for inviting me to be here. I think I can honestly claim to have been around as long as anybody else, but not necessarily at NALDIC conferences. I'm going to be talking today about the connection between language and thinking, and in fact, to be more precise, about the relationship between the development of language and its use and the development of ways of thinking and ways of learning. And I'll be talking about this approach which we call thinking together, which has been inspired really by the original work of two of my academic heroes. Lev Vygotsky is one of them, the Russian psychologist. Vygotsky was a kind of James Dean of developmental psychology. You know, live fast, die young, and he died in the 1930s with a lot of his work incompletely, but was a man of apparently amazing and infuriating talent who could kind of write plays and direct them and sing in a perfect pitch and also come up with these brilliant theories. Anyway, he did have some great ideas, and we've built upon them since. And the other person is a local hero, is Douglas Barnes, who was a leading light in the development of English teaching in the 60s and 70s, and I'm very glad to say is alive and well and living in London. Now, what we've really done and taken from the work of those people and others is the idea that language is not just a means for sharing knowledge, for instructing people, for coordinating social activity, which is the way it's often represented in psychology, say linguistics and so on. It's really something much more profound and important than that. It's a tool for thinking together, because with language we're able to link our minds and achieve more than the sum of the parts. And I agree with Jill that there's been too much of an emphasis in education in the past on individual achievement as a fixed thing, and in fact even on individual activity as an intellectual pursuit. And yet when we look in the wider world, we see that many of the great things that are achieved have been achieved by people working in communities or groups. Although we tend to celebrate these, the sort of the heroes, the individuals, we can really see that language and other means have enabled people to achieve more than they ever would alone. And you can look at people who've achieved much that we would all admire, such as the Brontes, such as the Bloomsbury Group, such as the Beatles, and you can see that I don't think many of those individuals would have achieved what they would without the group and the community resources that they were able to draw on to realise their talent and to work together to achieve great things. Now, I don't think we can expect all children to gain the right kind of experience about how to use language as a tool for thinking together from their lives outside school. I think this is one of the things that school has a responsibility to provide for children, to enable them to develop a repertoire of ways of using language as a tool for thinking together with other people that they might not have gained otherwise. And this might be one of the things that schools should particularly help children with if the language of their educational experience isn't the same as that of their home. And the important thing that we get from Vygotsky's work is that there is a cyclical relationship between social ways of using language and ways of using language as an individual mental tool, as a psychological tool. Because from the way that we learn through other people how they're making sense of the world, we learn ways of making sense of the world ourselves. And then we can contribute to that. And so it is an important thing to realise that individual development and social activity are bound up in a cyclical movement of development. And I think that teachers can usefully think of themselves as guides to ways of using language as a tool for thinking. You can lead children into ways of realising how language can be used and enabling them to use it for their own learning, and in fact not just in school, but in fact for their own learning and in the rest of their lives. But to do so means looking very hard at what is really involved in thinking together, and at what we do with language in the classroom and how we enable children to make it clear. Jill mentioned this idea of ground rules, by which I would mean the implicit ways that language is used, that are taken for granted in all of our lives. Sometimes those rules need to be brought out in the open and considered and reviewed and defined in a way that enables people to ensure that they're all working in the same way and sharing, have a shared understanding of what they're all trying to do and how they're able to achieve it together. And by enabling children to see how language works as an effective tool for thinking together, we can enable them to use it for their own means and to take more control of their own learning. So my colleagues and I, working with teachers, in fact some of my colleagues on the research team are teachers, have developed some very good ways, I think, of doing this, which have now been tried and tested pretty thoroughly with a number of age groups. And that's one of the reasons why the Thinking Together approach has been incorporated now into the primary and Key Stage 3 strategies and figures on the DFES standards website. And so I'm going to, in this session this afternoon, which is in this intimate venue here, going to be encouraging people to engage in thinking together activities themselves, as well as hearing a bit more about how it works and considering some of the practical ways that teachers can go about it. So thank you very much.